Metroidvanias have seen a resurgence lately, and the Nintendo Switch is home to some of the best. While we could gush over Hollow Knight and Ori and the Blind Forest like everyone else, we've decided to give the spotlight to some lesser known Metroidvanias that you should also play. We've also made sure to pick only one game from any given series for the sake of variety. That said, let's jump right in. Number 10. Yoku's Island Express. Yoku's Island Express deserves its place on our list purely for originality alone. You play as Yoku, who is a dung beetle of all things. The main traversal mechanic is pinball-related paraphernalia dotted around a colourful world. Yoku embarks on his adventure by being flung around by paddles, bumpers, and the like. How's that for originality? What's all the more impressive is that this was the debut title from Studio Villa Gorilla, who we haven't heard from since 2018, but we sincerely hope that the next project is in the works. Yoku's Island Express is the kind of game that you can often find heavily discounted these days, so if you haven't played a Metroidvania before and want a fun, not too taxing and addictive entry to the genre, then there's honestly no better place to start than Yoku's Island Express. Number 9. Ghost Song. From solo developer Matt White, Ghost Song was a surprise hit. Having been in development for almost 10 years, Ghost Song's combat is punishing, but the desire to push forward and help the protagonist Deadsuit piece together their memories is all too enticing. Ghost Song is set on a barren moon called Lorien, occupied by humanoid bionic suited beings known as Deadsuits. The Deadsuit you occupy, who is referred to in-game as, well, Deadsuit, is frequently troubled by her own musings as to whether she's human, robot, mechanoid, or something else entirely. She encounters a number of humans on her journey, and it's through the dialogue that she learns what she is and why she's there. This is certainly a Metroidvania for Metroid fans rather than Castlevania fans. It may not be as polished as some of the other games higher on our list, but it makes up for it in its atmosphere, ambient music, and a story of self-discovery that is both engrossing and relatable. Number 8. Alwa's Legacy. The first entry on our list from Elden Pixels, Alwa's Legacy is the sequel to Alwa's Awakening, and we could easily have picked both games. However, we decided to go with Alwa's Legacy because it's much more expansive and much more beautiful than its predecessor. As with the first game, Zoe is the protagonist and Alwa is the setting. The pixel art is absolutely top tier and looks incredible. Alwa's Legacy is probably one of the games on this list most heavily influenced by The Legend of Zelda, with dungeons, puzzles, and plenty of secrets to uncover. If, like me, you're a massive lover of both Metroidvanias and The Legend of Zelda, then look no further than Elden Pixels' mini masterpiece. Number 7. Astalon: Tears of the Earth. Arguably the most obscure entry on our list, Astalon: Tears of the Earth has you play as a party of 3 protagonists, and it's around these characters that the gameplay and story unravel. The water supply has been poisoned, and all they know is the source of the poison is the tower in which they begin their adventure. Epimetheus is a demon who has a significant interest in their mission, though it's unclear exactly why to start off with. What separates this game from its peers is the mechanic of controlling different characters, many of whom join you throughout the journey. You can rotate control between a party of different characters, which is the main element of puzzle solving. Astalon: Tears of the Earth looks great, sounds great, and plays great. It is a true example of indie developers punching above their weight. Number 6. Cathedral. One more from Elden Pixels, except this time as a publisher. Cathedral gives Astalon: Tears of the Earth a run for its money for the biggest underdog on this list. You play as a plucky knight who has a sword, a shield, can jump, and also use down attacks with their sword, like the infamous pogo sticking in Hollow Knight and Shovel Knight. Released back in February 2021, Cathedral is epic in scale and beautiful in presentation. It provides a captivating mix of exploration, challenging platforming, and Souls-like boss fights. The last boss ends in epic, ethereal fashion, which gives even the final boss from Hollow Knight a run for its money. If you haven't heard of Cathedral before, then you should play it. Play it again, and tell your friends all about it too. Number 5. Soldiers. Soldiers released 2 years ago, but we still think about it once a week to this day. An epic adventure from developers Retroforge. It feels like Zelda meets Metroid meets Dark Souls. Almost every Metroidvania tries to emulate at least one of these 3 series, but Soldiers is the only one I've played on this list that nails them all. Its lovely, bright 16-bit art style draws you into a false sense of security because the combat and boss fights within are punishing. Soldiers' release was a hot mess, almost to a point of being comical. We remember the build we had for reviewing just before release barely held together, and there were legions of rightly furious gamers when it actually released. But it's a real testament to the quality of Soldiers that despite all of this, it makes our top 5 and is only denied higher spots by some absolute masterpieces. Number 4. Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Nights. It really says something about our top 3 that Ender Lilies only makes it into our number 4 on our list. You play as Lily, trying to save her kingdom, Land's End, from a mysterious blight that has entombed it. From a distance, Ender Lilies doesn't look too sinister, but dig deeper and the world of Land's End is terrifying and punishing. With Souls-like bosses, balletic platforming, and one of the most secret-packed worlds around, Ender Lilies is a must for any fans of the genre. And get excited, a sequel, Ender Magnolia, was just announced. If it's anything as good as the first, we could have an absolute blockbuster on our hands. Number 3. Blasphemous. Number 3 is the epic masterpiece Blasphemous. Since its release in 2019, it has spawned merchandise, cosplaying, and a sequel released in 2023, but the original is still the best in our opinion. You play as the Penitent One, a silent knight with a big pointy hat who slashes their way through the world of Custodia, while trying to take down the godlike evil known as the Miracle. What makes Blasphemous stand out from many of its peers is its presentation. The art style and iconography are heavy on the gothic religious aesthetic. It plays out on a tapestry so rich and unique that you have to sit back and applaud it. Here you have art direction, game design, and creative direction all holding hands and skipping down the street in harmony. This, coupled with the genius level design and tack-sharp combat, make for an epic, unforgettable experience. Number 2. Aeterna Noctis. Another game on this list with a sequel in development. In Aeterna Noctis, you play as the King of Darkness who has lost his powers as punishment for overseeing one of the 2 warring factions in Aeterna. Straight out of the blocks, Aeterna Noctis is absolutely beautiful. The stained glass aesthetic is not only original, but it looks fantastic and perfectly fits the grim world of Aeterna. The difficulty is also perfectly pitched. The combat was challenging, but not to a point of being overly punishing. The boss fights are epic, and the world of Aeterna is huge and ripe for exploration. Aeterna Noctis is almost the best of the best, and we were this close to putting it at number 1. Tight gameplay, a huge game world to explore, and beautiful aesthetics all add up to an enthralling experience. But there's one more game that, for us, stands out amongst the other lesser-known Metroidvanias. Before we announce number 1, some other titles that need some special mention. Agelos, a colourful Metroidvania that's been out since 2019, and is a cheap and cheerful option on the Nintendo Switch store, which won't disappoint. Haiku the Robot and Astro Knight are 2 pocket-sized Metroidvanias that pack a punch, and are both really accessible for new players to the genre. If you love more Souls-like Metroidvanias, then Grime and The Last Faith are both fantastic games. Grime has only recently come out on the Nintendo Switch and is pretty buggy at the time of writing, but it's an awesome Metroidvania in its own right. Number 1. Axiom Verge 2. This might be a slightly controversial pick for number 1. Axiom Verge 2, as the title obviously suggests, is the sequel to Thomas Happ's legendary 2015 Metroid homage. With both having been released for the Nintendo Switch, both qualified for our list, and it was a real challenge deciding which one to pick, but the sequel ultimately made it in. What makes it controversial, you say? Well, one of the most surprising aspects of Axiom Verge 2 is that there are no bosses, or at least none that are compulsory for the story. It feels almost sacrilegious to choose a game that tops our list which bypasses one of the most infamous Metroidvania pillars, hard-as-nail boss fights. But what sets Axiom Verge 2 out from the rest is its ambitious level design. And hey, if this offends you and you want a game which is just as good, but also has boss fights, just get Axiom Verge 1. In Axiom Verge 2, you play as Intra exploring the world of Kiangear. Throughout the early parts of the game, there are subtle hints that Kiangear isn't all that it seems. Then the twist comes. You are only exploring Kiangear's overworld, and there is a whole parallel version of it to explore called The Breach. It took me back to playing The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past and the excitement and trepidation that one feels when first coming across the Dark World. It adds to a whole new depth and layers to puzzle solving, and the mind races at the thought of exploring the new avenues that open with it. So there we have it, Axiom Verge 2. This was a hard choice, and any other of the top 4 could easily have made it, but for enjoyment, ambition, and execution alone, then Axiom Verge 2 tops the pile for me. What are some of your favourite lesser-known Metroidvanias on the Switch? Be sure to let us know in the comments below, and for more great Nintendo videos, be sure to click the video on the left side of the screen and subscribe.